Welcome to Horns Up. I'm Peter,
And I'm Animesh.
and we're joined by Dave Carlo of Razor. Now, the band are back with their first album in over 25 years, Cycle of Contempt. First of all, congratulations, Dave. How does it feel that the album Cycle of Contempt has finally been released?
Thank you. Thank you for having me on. I have to say it's been a long time coming. You know, you feel this big buildup, and I've been working on this for a good while now. So it's just great that the day is finally here and people can hear the music, and I hope they like what they hear.
Definitely, we do like what we hear. Are you surprised with the excitement around the new album, or was it all expected?
It's always surprising in a good way to see people react positively to what you've done. Do you expect it? Well, you hope that they're sharing the same viewpoint I'm having about the music. I'm trying to write music to please myself because I'm a fan too, and I figure if I please myself and I'm a fan, then I'm going to please most of my audience, and that's what I'm hoping to do. You know.
Before we hit record, Animesh talked about me living in Toronto, and this was a while back. But I'm going to come to that in a bit. But one of the things I kept hearing about is, oh my God, you should have heard Razor. And to my dismay, like the last album you released was in 1997, which was close to a decade before I lived there, right? At that time when Decibels released, did you think there would be another Razor release?
No, I didn't. In fact, when I did Decibels, Razor wasn't even active. Between 1992 and 2002, the band was pretty much retired. What happened with 1997 was all I did was I had written those songs in 1992. They were going to be the follow-up album to Open Hostility, but I decided instead to retire from the band because the 90s were not a good time for our style of metal. And the reason Decibels came out was because my singer called me a few years later and he said, Dave, I put lyrics on those songs that you wrote, because I never had the lyrics, I just did the music. And he said, can we record them professionally? He said, I'm going to put together a little deal and we'll just make the record for ourselves. And I said, sure, let's do that. So we did Decibels, and that's how it came out. It wasn't until the early 2000s when the internet became high speed and people started discovering the band, younger people, that we actually started thinking about getting back together and playing live again.
Okay. But even since then, I mean, the production and songwriting on Cycle of Contempt doesn't sound like you guys took a break at all. Like you from playing all those riffs and everybody else doing everybody else. I know it's a changed lineup, but still, how long have you had these songs written, the ones that come on Cycle of Contempt?
These are all new. These were written in. Now, Razor has been playing live quite a bit in the last 10 years. Since around 2010, we were doing a lot more shows. Now, I had cancer in 2012, so that was a year and a half that we weren't doing anything. But other than that, band's been pretty busy. So, we were used to playing together a lot. And I wrote Cycle of Contempt in 2018. In the spring of 2018, I wrote all the music. And the lyrics came during the pandemic because we ran into some delays. Pandemic was the biggest one. But the music was written in early 2018.
Yeah. And I'm glad you brought up the lyrics, right? Because I have to be honest, like the first time I heard the album, when I got the promo copy, I was like, fuck, like there's a lot of like anger on these songs. Like you could kind of visibly feel it, right? And you could tell like Bob really fucking sounds pissed off in there. And then I was going through your press note where you said that you wanted to include everyone that's ever felt pissed off about anything, right? So take me back to that, like, because you said that you wrote the lyrics, right? Like, what was your brief, or how do you kind of explain to Bob, like, what to channel during the recording process?
Well, on this album, we have 12 songs, and I wrote the lyrics to 7 of them. 3 of them are my bass player, Mike Campanolo, who was the main lyricist for Razor in the early days, the first 3 albums. And then Bob wrote two songs himself. So we get a nice cross-section of the whole history of the band here, but I did do the majority of them. The album was being called Cycle of Contempt, of course. Contempt is another word for resentment or disdain for something. And the album has a lot of the themes that have to do with dealing with sucker punches that we take as human beings, because every human being is faced with the same circumstances, which is we have to overcome problems that we're facing all the time, and it never ends. It's always the way it is, and that's why we're calling it cycle of contempt. It always comes back to having to overcome some kind of setback, and how we react to it. So it's okay to be angry about setbacks. It's okay but the important thing is also to fight back and not to accept accept setbacks, and without we're defiant, and there's a whole kind of defiance behind the lyrics on this record, and not taking anything just lying down, but fighting back when you're being messed with.
Specifically, I love the way the album starts out with the gang vocals.
Yeah.
It basically transports you to a dive bar or a nice dingy lit indoor arena of sorts, where I can't wait for the band to start playing and help me basically channel my entire outrage into some positive moshing.
Well, it's kind of a fun way to start it too. After 25 years without a record, to hear people that those are from the audiences that we've had over the years, and it's just nice to give them get that in there. We thought it was a cool way to open and close the album.
So one of the things you talked about was like it's been 25 years, right? Tell us like what's changed, right? Like if you think about it, there's so much change technology-wise, right? What's the kind of work that you've seen it's taken to kind of release an album after 20 years, 5 years, right? I mean, like what's the biggest learning you would say you've taken back?
Well, there's a big difference between what we were doing, of course, in the 80s and even in the 90s, and what's happening today because of the internet. The internet has really completely changed the way everything is done. Like, for example, even the fact that I'm doing an interview with you guys so quickly and efficiently and easily. The old days, we would have had to set this up and done it on the phone connection, and it would have been probably not even a great phone connection, and it would have taken a long time to make it happen, and maybe even some of our correspondence would have been through the old mail, right? It took 10 days to get a letter. So this is the big thing. Nowadays, all bands, brand new bands, people that don't even have an audience yet, have the level playing field that they can get their music out to the whole world through a whole bunch of different ways that we didn't have back then. And so that makes it better for us because we have a chance to reach more people much faster, and it gives us as fans a chance to hear more bands and have more choice, right? So it's all good. That's the biggest thing that's changed. The model for how to make money as a musician is changed, because in the old days, excuse me, it used to be all about record sales. Because to hear the band, other than if you heard it on the radio, you had to physically buy a copy. Now you can stream. And so what happens is that because of this, we don't make the same money with records we used to make. I mean, I encourage everybody, if you love the band, do us a favor and buy a physical copy, because we try to give you a very good package anyway. There's some cool stuff in there, and you get the lyrics and some cool photos and stuff. But the truth is that we can now we can reach the audiences without having to go through the old establishment channel, which was you had to have radio airplay, you had to have the media covering you, and they could dictate what your taste was. Yep. And that's why in the 80s and the 90s we used to see that thrash metal and the kind of metal we were playing kind of went out of style in the 90s, and death metal and the alternative music started to become more big. But that was shaped by what the record companies decided were important to you, and what the media decided was important, what the radio stations decided was important. It wasn't what the fans or people decided was important. Nowadays, people are deciding. So the model has changed on how to make money as a musician, because instead of making your money by selling records, you make your money by performing live and by selling merchandise. That's the big difference.
Having said that, the role of the musician itself, or the role of the artist, has also changed. Today's musician needs to be a lot more engaging with the fan, right? Because at the end of the day, the musician or the artist is the one who is responsible to drive sales and help make a living out of his or her art. Do you enjoy this change in roles? And has this personally affected you?
It is a bit of a challenge for me because of my eyesight. I'm partly blind, so it makes it
Mhm.
hard because I use special software for everything I do on computers and even on my phone. You should see the size of the fonts on my phone. It's ridiculous. But so it's not always easy for me in that way. But I love the opportunity to talk directly to people. We also have to understand that the internet has brought us some very amazing opportunities to talk to some amazing people, and it also brought us a bunch of jerks who are out there doing nothing but saying
The
stupid
jabronis.
things, spreading lies. People who give reviews of a record and they shit on the record because they want to get noticed themselves, even though they don't know what they're talking about. There are guys. I remember this. I never forget it. That somebody did a review of Metallica's Kill 'Em All, which for me, I was there when it came out in 1983, was a masterpiece of a record. And these guys giving it like 3 stars out of 10. Okay. It's like, okay, why are you even reviewing metal? Like, who are you and why are you even on here talking about it? Okay. If you don't like it, piss off. Don't waste my time because I'm going to like that band and you're going to ruin it for me by saying it's no good. And so there's these guys out there doing that. It drives me nuts. So you can't count on reviews anymore.
Yeah.
I learned that since the internet. You get not actually. The truth is though, if you even go back to the 1980s, most of my favorite movies and bands usually got lousy reviews too. So I don't know what to tell you. I wouldn't worry about reviews. I would just check for myself. If you like thrash metal, you check Razor out. You're probably going to like it.
Yeah.
Of course. Of course.
It brings to mind, like, I think it had gone viral a bit where someone had thrashed Led Zeppelin back in the day. And now I'm pretty sure like that guy's eating his words, looking at what they're doing.
Hey, people. Some of my favorite stuff was always criticized. I mean, as a fan of movies, I've always liked movies by Clint Eastwood, Charles Bronson. My favorite, Charles Bronson's one of my favorite. Well, Charles Bronson was always critically panned by everybody. Nobody liked his movies. They always said they were lousy, and it's like, well, he had a pretty good career for a guy who made nothing but lousy movies. He seemed to do okay,
Alrighty. Continuing on the train of thought of the internet, I was going through your Twitter feed and I noticed that you voiced your support for Salman Rushdie and what he'd had to go through recently, right? It's a very bold and brave statement to make because it takes like one matchstick to ignite social media's rage against you. And we really don't know where that matchstick is going to get lit, right? Which is why it was a bold and brave statement to make, especially for a musician or an artist. What's your take on social media these days?
Yeah, I don't worry. I think I think the important thing is to educate people. And I really think we'd be better off if we spent some time educating people about social media and what people can and cannot do. And I think the world is so sensitive about what people say these days. It gets to the point where you almost feel like not me, okay? Because I'll say what I have to say because if I was a victim of that cancel culture that you see, for example, well then cancel me. I'll go do something else. That's kind of how I look at it. I don't care. I'm not that worked up about it. But other people who have their careers destroyed because they've done or said something stupid, well, I mean, what was I voicing when I said that I was concerned about Salman Rushdie? Well, I'll tell you what I was voicing. I don't think a person should have to take a stage to talk about anything and worry about a freaking knife.
Yeah.
Right. And the same thing with a gun. Right. It's like you shouldn't have to be afraid to be a public person, and if you are, then that's shame on the society that's got you feeling that way.
Exactly.
Okay? Because how are we going to be entertained, or how are we ever going to accomplish anything as a human race if we can't take a stage and talk and have a voice? People can disagree, right? What's wrong with disagreeing? And like I just said a second ago, we've got these knuckleheads who are doing these terrible reviews for no good reason. A lot of the time, reviewing very good music poorly. Well, you have to live with it. what am I going to do? Get a knife and go knife the guy when he's on stage telling me he doesn't like a band? No, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be like, well, he's an asshole, and I'm going to move on. That's what you do. You don't have to, you don't have to physically accost people who don't agree with you. It's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think we're more civilized. This isn't 3,000 years ago in humanity. I mean, we should be more advanced by now, all of us.
I hope we can be a bit more advanced.
Yeah.
Me too. Anyway, I say stuff in my lyrics, like my wife. I just lost my wife 2 weeks ago. She died from cancer.
Deepest condolences on that.
And,
On the
the reason
very day the world lost Queen Elizabeth II, right?
Yes. And this was the love of my life, this lady. She was a wonderful lady, and I was married to her for 25 years. And she was one of the people that told me, she used to worry about me. She said, Dave, you're going to go on stage. Maybe you're going to get yourself shot with some of the stuff you say. And I said, you know what? I'm going to take the stage. And if, I'm going to hope that nobody's that stupid. What have I said that deserves it? Nothing. But, it doesn't matter. Look what happened to Dimebag from Pantera, right? He got shot by somebody for no reason at all. This can happen to people. But you again, educating people, getting people to realize you can disagree with people without having to physically attack them. And I know it's kind of funny, a guy like me saying this when I write a song called Punch Your Face In. But, you have to remember that we are entertainers too. Charles Bronson made movies where he was shooting all kinds of people. But if Charles Bronson actually really shot somebody, he wouldn't be making movies anymore. And the same thing goes with me. I may write a song called Punch Your Face In, and it might feel good to listen to that song and to think about it. But I'm actually not going out to punch anybody's face in, because if I did, I'd just get locked up. So obviously, it's entertainment, and we should understand that. Maybe some people need to be told that. I guess some people need to be reminded that it's entertainment.
So, you know what? On that note, let's give our listeners a taste of Cycle of Contempt. Let's make this a little fun, right? What was the most challenging song for you to record? Why?
The title track, the song Cycle of Contempt, was the most challenging. Okay. And the reason was the riffing is very challenging. It's very challenging. For me, it was especially the second half of the song. Just got to have my head completely focused to be able to play that reliably every time. So I would say that one. And maybe First Rate Hate is also a tough one, because First Rate Hate, the whole first half of the song is down picking. I'm picking down. I'm not picking both ways. And what that means, if you're a guitar player, it means that I have to be, it's an extremely fast way of playing that riff. It's a tougher way to play the riff, but it makes it sound heavier and chunkier. So that's a challenge for sure.
Okay, so why don't we just play it in the order of appearance of the album itself, which is first you'll hear First Rate Hate and then Cycle of Contempt. Here you go.
On Sunday, pretending to be sweet, and yet they find it easy to lie, steal, and cheat. Religious rot corrupts them, not something they can feel. They go through life oblivious to what we know is real. As long as they have something, don't care if you've got squat. They never feel compassion, it's a lesson they weren't taught. They sell you out for peanuts, if that's what suits them best. But punishment is coming for those that we detest. The only justice that we have, the justice we create, to take out our frustration and set those bastards straight. First rate hate. Asking fools for money to pay for all their toys. Fancy suits and fancy cars from scams that they employ. If I can do some damage and fuck up all their plans, they'll get a taste of what it's like, but they still won't understand. So take your fucking fairy tales and stick them up your ass. Someone has to tell the truth and free us from the past. All you want is more for you while everyone else dies. Try showing people some respect instead of preaching lies. Fucking lies. That's right. Fucking lies.
I've been dying to ask this question ever since you've been talking about your comeback and stuff like that. Oh, pardon the word comeback, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
Because when I lived in Toronto in the mid 2000s, I discovered Sacrifice, the Canadian death thrash band, because Marquee Records all the way in Brazil did a reissue of their first 3 albums. And a few years ago, Relapse Records, which I ended up picking a few, and then they reissued Violent Restitution, Shotgun Justice, Open Hostility, Armed and Dangerous, which I really love also. Now, the reason I'm asking you all of this is, right, there's a new generation of sorts who are suddenly exposed to Razor and their music. Have you noticed that? And the second question being, what would you attribute to the renewed interest in Canadian thrash metal acts all of a sudden? Like we've seen this in the last 8 to 10 years or so, right?
Yes, for sure. Well, I would say, well, no, can you repeat the question again? Just because I got the second part, I was just about to answer the first part, and then I really agreed with what you were saying, though. So it's, but
no. So I would say, have you noticed, because of the reissues by Relapse, a new generation of metalheads suddenly discovering Razor?
yes. Okay, thank you. Yes, of course. Yes, I have. That goes right back to the beginning of the high-speed internet that started to happen. But having Relapse, on my team here helping us certainly raised it a notch, right? Because people like yourself were able to discover us because of that too. So that was a big help. And like I say, the more help I get, the more I want, because it's beautiful to see more people discovering our band and other Canadian bands as well, which of course on this new album of Razor, we have Rob Urbanati, the singer for Sacrifice, actually does a guest vocal for us on one of the songs.
Oh, cool. This I didn't know.
Track 5, Cross.
Yeah.
Cross has 3. Bob Reed sings the first verse, Danko Jones sings the second verse,
Oh, cool.
and Rob Urbanati sings the third verse. And, so it's nice. And I'm hoping that people will notice Rob and check out Sacrifice too when they hear it, right? It gives us a chance. And another band that's having a nice resurgence is Exciter. And there's a band that I'm going to get out and play. We're going to get out and play a lot of shows with them next year from the looks of it.
That's great. And for all of those who will be discovering Razor through Cycle of Contempt, which album would you recommend they check out, other than Cycle of Contempt, of course, which they'll be doing?
Well, I guess the next ones would probably be Shotgun Justice and Violent Restitution. Those should be checked out, I think, next. Evil Invaders, Open Hostility. I mean, I really, I don't think that there's the only one that I'm proud of everything we did. The only album that doesn't really remind me of classic Razor is Custom Killing. That is our 4th album. It's very experimental. It's more progressive. So you're not going to hear a Cycle of Contempt type album. If you buy Custom Killing, you're going to hear something much more progressive. But it's still got some old style Razor or fast stuff in it, but it's just not quite as intense. But I'm still proud of it. I'm still proud of all the recordings we did. But I would start with Shotgun and Violent Restitution.
It's so weird that it's always the 4th or 5th albums which generally end up being the complete divergent ones, especially from thrash metal bands.
Look at that. I'll have to check that out now that you say that. I'll have to see the.
Oh my God. So now I was watching another interview of yours, or I think I read this, I can't remember, where you actually describe yourself as a micromanager. Like you want to get like everything kind of done. Now, just having to look back at Cycle of Contempt, the entire process, would you looking back say made the writing process and recording process easier or harder?
Okay, it made it harder for sure. And I will make a qualifying statement there. I am a reluctant micromanager because there is nothing I would love to do more than not micromanage anything. In fact, I don't even want to manage anything. But this was too important to me this time. This album was too important to me to just let things go to chance. I have done that before. I was not involved enough in Decibels. I was not involved enough in Custom Killing. And those are two albums that I feel like I could have improved those albums by being more involved in. So yeah, this one, because it was 25 years and it was a comeback record, and you get people who you don't want to hear it too much. I mean, there's going to be the internet jerks who are going to say whatever, no matter what. You're going to get these guys who say, I wish they never did this. I wish they never came back, right? Those same dummies, maybe 10 years from now, they'll call the album a classic. So it doesn't matter. But the fact is that you just want the comeback album to be, most of your audience is happy. And I really needed to be involved in it, because I figured if it doesn't go well, I want to take the blame. But if it does go really well, the credit has to be shared, because there's 4 guys in the band.
Okay. So do you prefer the word micromanager, or do you prefer the word perfectionist?
Micromanager's better, because everything's not perfect. Everything's not perfect. It's not all perfect. I don't know if we could ever get perfect, but satisfied, yes, I'm satisfied.
That's perfect.
All right. So, you know what? Just to keep a check on time, here's our last question for you. And I think this you can ramble on as much as you want. What's next for Razor?
Okay, next for us is we're going to gauge the reaction of this record. I'm going to turn my agents loose. I have an agent for Europe. I have an agent for the Americas. I have people who help us with Asia and Australia, but we haven't been to Australia yet either. So the goal is to get Razor in front of everybody at some point, in front of every audience that is, it has to be a good audience. I'm not going to play for 12 people, but we want everywhere where we think there's a chance for a very big turnout at a show. We want to be there. We want to play. So I'm going to turn these agents loose, and we're going to look at 2023 as a year where we're going to be very busy out there performing.
That sounds like a fantastic plan.
Yeah.
I hope you're
like it. If people like this album, I'll make another one, but that's not going to be right away. It's going to be a few years away from that, but that could happen if I think this album is received positively enough, and we get out there and play live, and the songs go over well and everything. Maybe we'll think about doing another one.
Well, you've certainly got 2 fans in Bombay, India.
Yep.
Well, I really appreciate that. I get a fair bit of people contacting me from India through social media and stuff. So I think there's some intense metal fans over there.
Yeah.
Yep.
I may have to think about finding somebody to get us over there some point. I never really thought of India as an audience for us until the last 5 years or 6 years. I noticed we're getting a lot of people from India following me on social media and talking to me and stuff. And it's like, wow, there seems to be a scene there.
There is a decent scene here, and certainly the power of the internet bringing the world together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all I'll say about it at the moment, though. For that's all the time we have on Horns Up at the moment. Thank you so much for your time, Dave. I hope this was enjoyable for you.
It was fantastic, my friends. My last words, please, guys, follow me on social media. Just type Dave Carlo Razor into Google, and you will find all of the necessary links there.
You can always reach out to us at hornsuppod.com or on Twitter at hornsuppod. I'm on Twitter at Asmoani.
I'm at Trend Crusher.
And this was Horns Up.
Horns up, guys.